I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm actually going to be talking to one of my team members, Ingrid. We're just going to be chatting back and forth about tips and what we found helpful in transitioning from one grade level to a different one. And I have to say, or I have to admit, before becoming a literacy specialist, taught multiple classroom grade levels, pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade. And when I was transitioning from one grade to another, I kind of felt like, ugh, like this is so frustrating. I feel like I'm starting over. But honestly, I do feel like teaching multiple grades helped me grow so much as a teacher, and it really equipped me to be the literacy specialist that I am today. So even though I didn't always love those moments of transitioning and like going through a new classroom and, setting everything up, I do feel like it was overall a beneficial experience. And so in this video, we're going to be sharing our personal experiences and tips for helping you navigate a grade level transition. Really excited for this video. Before we dive into the interview though, or I guess it's not really an interview, it's just a chat, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and then also hit that little bell so that you're notified every time I post a brand new video about teaching literacy in K2. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into this conversation that I had with Ingrid. Hey, Ingrid, I'm so excited to have you here with me today. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Ingrid is on the Learning at the Primary Pond team, and I'll let you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So, yes, I get to serve on this wonderful team at Learning at the Primary Pond. Before being here in this position, I worked at a K4 through eighth grade school. And what I did was I taught, and then I was a literacy specialist. I served as a dean of instruction. So, I am grateful to be here and still be able to work with teachers in this capacity.
Amazing. Well, Ingrid and I are going to chat back and forth just about our experiences in supporting other teachers with switching grade levels. Me personally, as a classroom teacher, so I switched from pre-K to kindergarten, and then from kindergarten to first and second grade. And then like beyond that to literacy specialist and some leadership roles. I've also switched schools within one grade. So like taught kindergarten at different schools, bilingual, general education. So I've done a lot of switching, and I honestly, when I was going through it, it felt like a huge pain because it was like, okay, I have to figure out this new grade level. And I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, I have to sort through this whole classroom. But now looking back, I also feel like switching grade levels really helped me grow as a teacher and just gain a bigger understanding of how things unfold at different grade levels. So ultimately, even though it felt hard in the moment, we're going to talk about some things that will help it feel easier. I do think that it was great for my growth as a teacher. What about you, Ingrid? How have you supported teachers and switching?
Yes, so similar to you, just supporting teachers mostly at the school at which I was at. I mostly worked with K4 through fifth grade teachers. And I think the thing to consider too is there was definitely like a huge spectrum as to why teachers were switching that I was supporting them with. And quite often they wanted to. So, we'd hear like, hey, if a second grade position ever opens up, that's my dream grade and I'd love to teach it. But then we had situations, maybe where we had a teacher retiring. And so we needed like a K4 teacher to loop into K5 or something like that. So it's not always necessarily something that teachers want to do. Or like you mentioned, if they're switching schools completely and grades, that can be a lot to take on multiple changes. But I will say that mostly coming out of it, teachers were like, wow, that was a great learning experience. Sometimes they ended up going back to like their previous grade,
Yeah.
or it ended up being a great surprise. Like, I actually always thought I wanted to teach middle school, and then I landed in second grade, kind of begrudgingly, but ended up loving it and staying there. So you just kind of never know, like one, how you'll feel going into it, but of course, then what you'll feel coming out of it.
Totally. I forgot that you wanted to teach middle school. Now I can't even imagine it, but that's funny. So actually I have a question for everybody who is watching. If you have switched grade levels before, or you are going to switch grade levels soon, let us know, what were you feeling about that? Just love to hear your experience and your emotions going into it, because I feel like your emotional state plays into sometimes how the transition goes.
Totally. Yeah. I think too, just being open-minded, because like we said, it can be really scary and you can acknowledge that. It can also feel like a lot of work if you have like set up everything and you feel really confident in what you're doing, and then you're asked to switch, or even if you're choosing to switch, that confidence can kind of be waning a little
Yes, it sure can.
bit.
So being open-minded, super important. And then Ingrid, do you have any tips for like, because I know like sometimes when I would say especially between kindergarten and first and second that year that I switched, I felt like I was almost like going in blind. And I had worked with first and second graders in the past, but I felt like I didn't have a good sense of like what would we actually be doing during the day? Like what are they supposed to be learning? So do you have any tips to share to help with that?
Totally. Yeah. So, although it's not always the most glamorous task, I definitely recommend just reviewing the standards, because that's, of course, a great place to start. You might be pleasantly surprised too. A lot of the standards, of course, build off of one another. So, if you've done something in kindergarten, they're going to be moving forward with a lot of those things into first grade. Let's say you're moving from like kindergarten to third grade, a pretty big jump. Of course, look at the third grade standards, but definitely go back one grade and look at the second grade standards, because that will give you just huge insight into what they've covered and what they're coming in with, which is probably most importantly, to help you start the year. Just so you know, like what tools will they have, and then if you're looking at the third grade standards, you can say like, okay, here's where they will be expected to go. But again, you'll see like some of that overlap and maybe things you've taught. And then that will help identify maybe some of your gaps. Like, I'm really not familiar with, these subjects with these standards, and that may be where you'll want to spend more time prepping.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, especially with looking back one year, because with a big jump like the K to third, like you mentioned, you're like, oh my gosh, like how do we even get to the point where they can do this? But if you look back a year, number one, like you said, you'll be ready for the kids as they're coming in. You'll even be ready for kids that may be a little bit behind, but you'll kind of be able to see like, okay, we were supposedly supposed to be working on this, and now we're supposed to be here in third grade. And so what's the gap and how do I bridge those skills together?
Yes.
Awesome tip. Other tips that you might have.
So I definitely think like lean on your friends, lean on your coworkers, whether or not you have like prior, knowledge or relationships with those teachers, definitely seek them out. We all know that in this profession, like you just need that core group of people you can rely on. So it may feel, again, if you like have best friends in first grade and now you're moving to fourth grade or whatever it may be, but you can, of course, keep those, that core group you have, but also just look to like branch out and seek advice from teachers that have taught that grade, because they've lived it and they've breathed it. And they may definitely have ideas for like routines and procedures as you're thinking through that, because maybe something you did with second graders might not work as well with, kindergartners or something like that. So you may have ideas, but because they've done it, just maybe bouncing those ideas off of them and seeing what they think. Maybe if you don't feel like you have a network at that particular school yet, you can definitely, of course, look online, look at blogs or social media for those particular grades. Because again, even though it may be like still lower elementary, we know that there's a huge difference between like developmentally where beginning kindergartners are versus beginning second graders. So just kind of talk to people, and ask for advice. I mean, again, you don't always have to take it, but I think just having that to kind of sift through will be a good starting point.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that if you can observe other classrooms at all, so maybe it's the end of a school year and you know that you're going to be switching next year, maybe ask your principal if you can go and observe another grade level just to see, just to get more comfortable with like, this is how big the kids are and this is what they can do. And it's a little bit hard because you're seeing the end of the year versus the beginning of the year, but it can still give you a good idea. And even if you've already started the school year and you're in your new grade, I always just feel like observing other teachers, you learn so much from them. So if your administration is open to it, I would definitely say ask if you can get some observing time in, because it can really be helpful in your transition for sure.
That's a great point. And I think too, depending on where you live or what time of year it is, if there is like a summer school or something, you can always pop in there and just observe or volunteer for a day. Again, maybe if you're going into second grade, you'd want to observe first grade just to kind of see the kids. And then maybe observe also a second grade teacher to see the teaching style. But just bouncing, like to try and get that observation could be a huge teaching moment.
Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even think about summer school, but that is a good one. Okay, let's see. Let's also talk about maybe materials. Do you have any tips for teachers getting to know, like, okay, what kind of even like books or other types of materials am I or should I be using with this new grade level?
Yes. So I think that can probably be one of the most overwhelming parts because as teachers, we usually really pride ourselves on our classrooms and we put our heart and soul into those walls or everything that we have. So I would really start by doing an inventory of what you have, whether it's books, and those could be like teacher resource books or books for your kids. We all know that, like in this day and age, there's a huge level of differentiation that's needed. So that doesn't mean that if you're going to second grade from kindergarten, none of your books should come, because
Right, right.
you will most likely have students that may, use those books, and that'd be great, actually asset to have in your new classroom. But you probably don't have to take everything. And so really just think through like, what am I going to use? And also it's kind of like cleaning out your closet. Like if you haven't used some of this stuff for a while, that might be a good time to like part with it and pass it on. I know that I've been on both ends of it. So going into a new classroom, when I went into second grade, the teacher before me left a ton of things. And it was just so nice to walk into a classroom where I knew there were bins of books that were appropriate for second graders. There were some different teacher resource books. So the courtesy can definitely go both ways. Hopefully you'll be on the receiving end too, moving into a different classroom, but it's a good time to just take inventory and, of course, hold on to those things that are dear to you, but also be
Yeah.
willing to let go of the things that you might not need.
Yeah. Because if you don't, then you'll end up with a teacher hoarder closet like me, and no one wants that.
Or it like comes into your own home too. You're like bringing home things.
That's
Yeah.
me.
The same thing goes with like materials too. So even, if you have like bean bags or things like that, or just whatever, like I know I had little lamps that were special to me. Again, if you're going to use them, great. But if you don't think that those specific materials will be relevant, and used in your new classroom, feel free to leave them behind with a little note or something. And I think, whomever would really appreciate it.
Yeah, love it. Okay. Any last thoughts, ideas, tips, strategies, words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think as like corny and generic as it sounds, just really be willing to like listen and learn new ideas because as we noted, it can be scary. It definitely feels like you're often starting from scratch. But if you think about, whatever grade you're coming from, you are like really bringing a wealth of knowledge. Feel confident, like you're in this profession for a reason. You're going to a different grade for whatever reason, again, even if it's maybe not your choice in that moment. But you could also bring a lot of like new perspective to your team. And so don't feel like you have to just kind of sit back and take it all in. Be willing to listen, but also offer new ideas. I know that, if a team has kind of been together for a while, they definitely should and be willing to listen to whatever you have to bring to the table. But just know that you'll have to be flexible and adapt. Like I gave the example of, you might think that this, isn't going to be easy or a great fit, but you might end up loving it. And there's always room for change the next year. So if you end up, feeling like maybe this wasn't where I need to be, you can move back or look for something else. But I think you owe it to the kids that you're working with to just give it your all, and be open minded and flexible.
Yeah, I agree. I always feel like I find something to love about every grade level. So, like with my pre-K and my kindergarten babies, they were just so young and sweet. And like, so are first and second graders. But, like when I was working with the second graders, I was like, wow, you all can do so much. And I was a little bit less tired at the end of the day. So, I do think that there's something to love about every grade level. And I also think that if you go into it with the attitude of like, I'm going to figure this out versus I don't know what I'm doing. Like just having this attitude of I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to make changes, because often you're going to try something and you'll be like, this is how we're going to do it. And then a couple of months into the school year, you find that it's just not working. Just think of you that attitude of I'm going to figure this out. And if something goes wrong, I will fix it, or, I can make changes later. I think that will go a long way. I think that's kind of like what they call somewhat of a growth mindset too, like being willing to not just say like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not going to figure it out, versus being willing to grow and learn. And it'll be such an exciting year for you for switching grade levels too, because you're experiencing some newness, just like the kids are.
Right.
You're teaching something new, and it might be new to you and it's new to the kids. So I think it can really be fun.
Yes.
All right. Well, it was so great chatting with you, Ingrid. Thanks so much for being here. And if you're watching, I hope that you got some tips and strategies. And don't forget to leave us a comment about if you switched grades before, just, what you were feeling, and would love to hear from you. Thanks, Ingrid.
Thanks.
All right, I hope that chat was helpful to you. If you are changing grade levels, good luck. You got this. I know that it might be a little bit challenging at first, but I know that it can also help you grow so much as a teacher, and I hope that you love your new grade level. I post videos about teaching literacy all the time, and there's already a ton of videos on the Learning at the Primary Pond YouTube channel. So make sure, number one, that you like this video, but then also that you subscribe, because especially when you're transitioning to a new grade, you might wonder, what should I expect? What is normal? And the videos that I put out can really help you with that and just help make your transition easier. So again, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. And if you are changing to a new grade level, good luck.